call the April Finance Committee meeting to order. And the first item of business is Ms. Finch, would you call the roll, please?
Bruce Paulson.
Here.
John Pettit.
Here.
John Pettit.
Here.
Ron Kinsley. Tom Duffy.
Here.
Stacy Hessel. Here.
Okay, very good. Let's pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Finch, did we comply with the open meetings law?
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statute.
Okay, the next item of business is meeting agenda. It's been posted. Anybody want to change order or anything? Okay, very good. At this time, we'll entertain public comments. Anybody public?
No hands up.
Okay, very good. We will also now consider the minutes of the March meeting.
I move you approve them as presented.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the March minutes of the Finance Committee. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Winter Depot update. Is that?
Well, if we got Ron on the line, do we want to let Ron kind of give us his perspective? I just had a financial update for you.
Yeah, no, I think that was.
Yeah, Ron Pettit is on the line. Ron Pettit has been instrumental in the development of that Winter Depot. So, Mr. Pettit, if you're available, can you?
Hey, everybody. First thing, I just wanted to let you all know we're heartbroken to hear about the death of Paul. He did yeoman's work on your committee. He was extremely helpful to us. We express our gratitude to him and your entire committee. Nextly, good news. The project is 100% complete. You may have in front of you what's called a project certificate. Yeah, there it is. Notice it was signed on December 23rd, 2020, both by the architect and myself and Tom. And then I don't know if you have the second document. It's called the application certification for payment. That shows we owe zero. So the project is complete.
Very good.
All we need to do now is buy our computer, touchscreen, and security cameras, and we're ready to roll. And then when the DNR lets us open per the virus regulations, we will open. That's all I had. Oh, one other thing, Donna, what were you going to say?
Oh, no. Oh, I wanted to just thank Mike Keefe. Without him with me and the DNR, I'm not an accountant. And boy, this would have just overwhelmed me. So thank you, Mike, assets. Tom, thank you for all your support. All the committee members, everyone that supported us on this. This was it took us from 2000 to 2020 to get her done. Well, actually 2021. So what's that? 15 years. I've learned that perseverance creates character and hope. And so, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
That's all we had. Thank you so much for all your help.
Okay, thank you, and good job on the project.
You bet.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just want to acknowledge the work that Mr. Pettit, he was tireless in over the years in making this project happen, and I hope it does enhance the recreation and tourism down in that area. I think it's a wonderful facility the way it turned out, and Donna and Ron and your group down there working with the DNR. Great job, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Mr.
Can
Dunn.
we go to the financial? Has everything been paid? Does the county have any obligations anymore? Or?
Yeah. Yep, so we have received the DOT share of the construction dollars, which is 198,000. We're still working out about $15,000 on the design side of things. Working again with Ron Zimmer down in Spooner. He thinks we're gonna get that. We're just going through the paperwork on it. So
So going forward, hopefully we'll be out of this and free and clear, or do you think
yes,
we'll have some-
I'm hopeful that we'll break even.
And how long will this take?
I would sure like to have it done within a month, but I mean, we're down to 15,000. We were over 200,000, so we're getting there.
So we can leave that on the agenda for next month, maybe.
Yeah.
Bruce. Yeah, good.
All right.
And the
Anything else?
project was meant to be zero cost to the county. We were the pass-through. A while back, the county did pass a budget amendment to allocate 15,000 in contingency should things not work out, because there was a lot of things that came up obviously during the construction phase, and they were able to work through a lot of that with the DNR, change some things on that end. So, worst case scenario, we wouldn't get the 15,000 back, which we had kind of planned on, but in the best case, we'll get that reimbursed as well, and then come out with zero.
Is this going to be open all year round, or is it only summertime, or what's the intended use?
Mr.
It
Pettit?
should be open 100% of the time, once we get the go-ahead from the DNR.
Okay, did you answer your question?
Yeah, what's the plan for the use of this? Is it going to be open daily or yearly? Or,
It's gonna be daily. We're hoping for that. We're looking for volunteers. So if anyone of you has extra time,
Tom, there you go for right there.
yeah. What is it? Be like a chamber, or is it what are we going to serve? We serve there, or we?
Oh, about 4 things. One is a trailhead for all trail users. Secondly, a historical museum. Thirdly, a visitor welcoming center, and we have brochures from all over the area, all the. And then lastly, offices for the Friends group, for us to interact with trail users to tell them to stay on the trail and don't drink and use your motorized vehicles and things like that.
Okay, does that, Mr. Duffy, does that answer?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Any more questions, comments? Move on to
It
the,
looks very nice, Don. Good job.
yeah, I'm anxious to see it.
oh, and by the way, we are on the DNR. Is it tourism?
Yeah, we're
website?
linked from DNR Tourism, so that'll help our patronage.
Okay. Let's move on to agenda item 9. Mike, which one do you guys want to take?
You can start.
Okay. All right, so in your packet is a summary of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, as summarized by the National Association of Counties. This was signed into law by the president about a month ago, March 11th. Overall, it's 1.9 trillion, kind of to be divvied up between states, cities, counties, tribes, territories. They're anticipating Sawyer County's share of the funds is a little bit over $3 million. We should be receiving maybe half of it in about a month and receiving the other half about a year from now. And I guess I think starting on about page 5 of the packet, or page 10 of the entire finance packet. But on page 5, it starts to discuss what some of the allowable uses of these funds are. Pretty general in nature at this point. We are expecting, hoping for some additional guidance on how we can spend these funds more in depth and detail than what's detailed here. I'm not sure when those are going to come out. I'm just hearing soon, so stay tuned for that.
The Treasury, they're going to issue the guidelines, aren't they? The Department of
Yes,
Treasury?
yes, yes.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to be using ours all for our meetings.
Boy, I don't know, does it say roads on here?
There's infrastructure,
No, I
but
know.
how do you define?
Well, that, that really brings up the question I had, is what process are we going to use to determine how to spend this money? Broadband, we need money for broadband, housing authority needs money, for some low and moderate income housing. What's the process? Do we have a thought yet, or are we just waiting?
Well, we've had some discussions with other counties too on what, they're thinking, and without the guidance on what we can use it for, I mean, that's gonna be the first step. The next step, as you said, is how do we decide, once we get the guidelines, how we allocate it amongst those things that we can spend it on. The good news is, we do get the money. They're talking like May 11th, somewhere in there. And things have been changing as we go along. Originally, we thought we'd have to file some form, which never came about. Now they're saying they're just going to, send the money to our bank account, and then we're still waiting for that guidance. But then there's other packages coming through as well. The state has got some money allocated to it directly, and there's talk about some road money coming through there. Again, very preliminary. So, it's not just what do we do with this 3.2 million, but how do we coordinate that with, the towns, with other counties if necessary. So I think that's a work in progress. The funds have to be expended by the end of the year 2024. So there's not an urgency, at this minute that we got to figure everything out. I think, it's going to slowly evolve into, what we can use it on, finding out our priorities and allocating those funds accordingly. So, don't get too antsy at this point about what are we going to do with it. We're going to have time to figure it out. And it's going to be a huge project because it's a huge amount of money. So,
all of the towns in Sawyer County, are they receiving money as well?
yes,
We have a list of what they are.
yes.
Okay. I don't need it now, but if you could send it to me. That would be
Yeah.
So this committee probably review and the priority setting process and how we go about allocating the money, and then pass it on to the county board.
Good question. Certainly something we can talk about, and I don't know where that's going to come from. Admin committee, from the county board as a whole, special ad hoc committee, several ad hoc committees, depending on topic. Broadband by itself could be, a project amongst itself. How do we help businesses? Part of it is recovery and tourism.
Right.
So there's going to be different facets that maybe different groups are working on, but then overall, how do we allocate a chunk to here and a chunk to there? That's a plan we need to develop, which, we'll have to work on going forward here.
And we'll set up a separate fund to account for
Right.
receiving the funds, expending the funds. And I think we'll probably have some discussion in the near term. How are we going to invest the funds until we need the funds?
My thinking is there's going to be more asks than we have money.
Probably.
That is how it works.
Usually the way it goes.
Right. So,
Yeah, I might just mention the piece of it. If we get money, 1.5 million here next month, we got to park that money somewhere.
right.
And then we'll earn interest on that money. And then there's talk about, do we have to use that on the project? And is that, so there's all kinds of questions that will arise as we move forward here. That
Right. But 2024 is going to come quicker than we think. Because I don't know if we've got any, as they say, shovel-ready projects right now for infrastructure.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I
So-
think you want to wait and see how the state's going to allocate towards some of these projects. That'll kind of
Right.
impact how we allocate, I would think.
Right. If there is an infrastructure package that comes through either from the feds or, the state allocating some of their share to counties for purposes,
Right.
that's why there is an urgency now, because we got to kind of wait and see. We don't want to allocate money to broadband if the state is going to suddenly allocate, what we need for, or what we can handle for broadband.
Right. So it's really, I'm more interested in the process. You know, what process are we gonna follow to set the priorities?
How much does the state get?
Billions.
30 million? No.
I thought it was like 3 billion. Or something crazy.
Yeah, but
Each state is different.
yeah,
In our state.
I don't have that number.
Is there, we pay it out the same way, 30 days, they get half of it, and a year later, the other half.
I think that's the way it works. And then, you know, the state is having conversation about, you know, whether the governor can dole that out or whether, you know, he needs oversight to allocate the money. So there's discussions at the state level on how they allocate that out.
So what's the next steps? Who's gonna, which group do we think should decide on the priorities in the process?
Finance and administrative.
But that would be my thinking, but the board ultimately should weigh in and, you know, but somebody's got to do the legwork. So it's my issue is not issue, but advice is the sooner the better we get to setting what we want, how we want to do the priority setting, how we want to allocate the money. I know roads,
No,
no
Yeah.
discussion.
there's always roads, but we all know there's projects for this county. But all we can do right now, I believe, is leave it on the agenda, have an agenda next month, wait for the guidelines to come, so we know
Right.
where to move forward to.
Right. But the guidelines aren't going to tell us how to set the priorities. That's my thinking. It's going to say you can do this, you can't do this. But how do we pick the thises and the that's to spend the money? So I would imagine that your group of county administrators or the WCA is wrestling with this very problem, aren't they?
Yeah, we talk about it every week.
Okay. So,
But, I mean, your point is understood, and I do think we talk about it every month from here till the end of the 24. And
yeah, I know that's the issue. Okay, so have we beat the horse to death?
Yeah.
Actually, the horse is alive. It's got $1.5 million.
Buy a lot of hay.
Okay, so I think Ron's suggestion is a good one. Just leave it on the agenda for next month. Will give us an update, at least on how we're thinking about setting the priorities. Okay, anything more on this topic? Okay, Mike, you want to take the
Yeah, so,
summary fund for 2020?
yep, starting on page 24 of the finance packet, this is an update. I provided you this either in January or February. We've been doing year-end reconciliation, so some of the numbers have changed since then. I'm just going to highlight the bigger changes. The general fund, the first one, Fund 100. We are currently at about 1.475 million excess in the general fund. I'm anticipating $10,000 or $15,000 more, and that should be about it for the general fund.
So what are we going to do with the 1.5 million?
Well, certainly nothing has been set in stone on it. I suspect, if I may presume, that a large share of it is going to go to cover deficits in Fund 225 over the next year. Look at Fund 225, they're sitting currently at a $775,000 deficit, largely because of the placement concerns that they have. Anticipated to be ongoing, so it is something we're going to have to work through.
It's, health and human services numbers are good, or are they anticipating numbers, things in these numbers?
The only thing I'm waiting on, and we usually, the state, you submit to the state a report, here's our expenditures for the month of December, and it's usually several months later before you receive reimbursement. We get the December CARS report, the money that goes back to 2020, and then we cut it off. Anything received after that goes into the new year. I have not seen a deposit yet in April. It doesn't mean there's going to be one, but there could be another deposit.
You're gonna come forward to this committee with a recommendation on what to do with the general fund excess? Is that how it would work?
Well, it will, yeah, in the short term, through the audit, the way it's set up now, it's just going to lapse into the general fund. We have to go through and determine fund balance, how much is designated,
Right, I understand.
non-spendable, restricted, committed, blah, blah, blah. I'm guessing most of this will probably at this point lapse into the unassigned fund balance,
Okay.
which is fine because that needs a little help too. But then I think as we go through this year and we see the direction of where human services is going, we'll have to have some discussions on how we're going to cover a potential deficit there.
Okay. Yes.
And that topic, I think we should kind of flesh out a little bit more. Mike talks about the Health and Human Services deficit due to those out-of-county placements. We did have significant talk about this at Health and Human Services on Tuesday evening. Overall, the services provided by Health and Human Services, budget-wise, they do okay. I mean, the majority of the programs were able to budget at least adequately. Where we get hit and where we got hit last year and anticipate from here on are these out-of-county placements on the mental health costs. Over the last 5 years, even though we weren't able to budget as much as we've expended in that area, overall, the Health and Human Service budget has been positive. So we've slowly built up that fund balance over time to over $1 million. Last year, we had several placements down in Winnebago and Mendota that caused us to spend, $1.5 million on those placements. So overall, their budget, I think we were under like 700 and some odd thousand, right, Mike?
Mhm.
And so, that $1 million plus fund balance, has been absorbed by, that overage last year. We anticipate at least spending that much this year. Potentially, there's 3 other people that could potentially end up in those facilities, so it could be as high as $2.7 million. We have not found a solution as to how a county can pay $2.7 million on, 3 or 4 individuals. Our total tax levy is $10 million.
Right.
So we're taking a significant chunk out of that to pay for a small minority of people that do need help. That there's no question about that. But how a county is expected to fund those expenses with the levy limits that are in place is impossible.
Mhm.
So we are looking at alternatives. This is the topic that we discussed on Tuesday morning with the CAP team, with WCA. It'll be the discussion that we have with state legislators when we meet with them on Friday. We meet with our local representatives in 2 sessions on Friday afternoon, so that'll be our main topic of conversation with them. But this is a significant issue that our hands are tied as far as solutions. There's a couple of statutory things we're looking at, and working with other counties and the Department of Revenue to get interpretations on whether there's some things we can do. We can't eliminate those costs, at least not the way things are set up now, but certainly an issue that we're looking at and have not found a palatable alternative at this point. But we do need to bring that up because it is significant, and that's our major problem that we're trying to deal with. We always have the normal operating issues on our expenses increase quicker than our levy limits allow us to keep up with that. Health insurance, with everything that happened last year, we're not looking at favorable rates next year on that. And those normal problems that we always have, we're going to continue to have, but this major issue on the mental health side is causing us sleepless nights.
There's nothing this committee can do to help or anything, is there?
Well, not initially, but if it comes down to these costs are going to continue to be our county's responsibility, we are going to have to either figure out a way to fit it in there, or what can we do? Yeah, this committee will have to wrestle with that as well as the whole county. And it is a county problem. It's not just, oh, well, if Health and Human Services is over budget, they got to find ways to spend it. It's going to be a county-wide issue that we have to address.
Yeah, our taxpayers issue, my employer's issue.
Yes.
So, but normally, don't we, in the budget process for 2020, you will look at the fund balances, let the general fund balances that are unassigned, and you decide to use some of that to help balance the budget, or move it around to balance other funds budgets.
Yes, we will as needed, yes.
Okay. So we'll be talking more about this in I'm going to say reality once we start the 2020 budget process, which is pretty close.
2022 budget process?
I mean, 2022, sorry.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's right around the corner. We're updating stuff now.
Right.
In anticipation of by June, pushing that out.
Okay. All right. Have you said what you wanted to talk about?
Just a couple other things I wanted to point out. On page 26 of the packet, Fund 460 is the borrowing we took out in late December last year. That's that 988,000. And then Fund 812 is showing a $213,000 deficit on this. But since I prepared this, we've received 198,000. So the deficit currently is the difference, approximately $15,000.
That's what you just said.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I got. Auditors should be in here. I think it's like the second week in June. They're going to be here.
Second week in when?
June.
Okay. And for the books for 2020 are pretty much closed, best we know.
Well, pretty much. There's still going to be a few things, but they're pretty much closed.
You know, we've got the pension adjustment that the auditors always do.
They do that. There's the forestry G&A grant.
Yeah.
That's that stuff they do for the feds. Still waiting for that money to come in for the second half of last year. That's the 10 or 15,000 was referencing.
Any questions on the summary by fund?
Mr. Chairman, what is the tribal law enforcement?
So the county gets a grant annually, and that's, you probably can explain it better than I, but the county, I believe, does a certain amount of patrolling on the reservation, and we get some funding to help with that. But we have to commit, I believe, a certain amount of time out there in order to receive those funds.
And this is enforcement of state law, tribal law, or what are we enforcing?
I believe state and county.
Yes.
Okay. Any more to add to that? No. Okay. Good. All right. Any more questions? Any questions on the summary by fund level? Ms. Pettit, are you okay? Okay, then we can move on to the.
Yes, I'm fine. I just couldn't get to the mute button.
Okay, thank you. Court update, court remodeling update.
Yeah, I'll just cover a few things here. Obviously, the courtroom expansion, adding the second courtroom is a project that is underway. We've got an RFP, a request for proposal out on the street to select a construction manager at risk for that project, working with our architect, venture architect, John Kane, and his group down there. So that, as I said, is out on the street. We had a call on, I forget what day, last week, Thursday, Friday, where the potential responders could ask questions and get a general overview of the project. So we had about 5 or 6 companies that were on the call, about 18 individuals that were participating in that. And then we expect to receive several proposals for that. The proposals are due on April 22nd. There's a question and answer period. We've got to get answers back to them on some questions that they asked by Friday. So that's part of that process. And then they need to respond by April 22nd. At the county board on Tuesday, there will be a recommendation coming forward, as was discussed on the last county board, the concept of having a ad hoc committee to kind of help review those proposals, get the interested parties involved, since it is, a pretty extensive project for the county. So the county board chair will be formally proposing that ad hoc committee as is required by the board rules to state the purpose and the members of that committee. So the committee members being proposed, I believe, are the county board chair, the public works chair, the finance chair, the public safety chair, and the county administrator. So those 5 individuals are being proposed as a method to keep each of those committees more informed. If there's things that come up during this process that they need to be aware of and put on their committee agendas, that's a great way to keep those individuals all the information told at once at the same time. So, if that goes through, then that ad hoc committee would be the ones involved in the interview process, which would be May 6th and May 7th. To select that construction manager, and then possibly reviewing any issues that come up during the process of the construction that happens over the course of time here. Also, there were some soil borings done last week. That's part of the process of determining the location of the building and how we connect these 2 buildings together. Likewise, a survey is going to be done. We've received 1 proposal. So far, it was rather high. They're contacting some other surveyors to try and get a more reasonable cost for that survey. It's something that our survey crew cannot do, so we do need to get some outside help on that. There's also been some tours done by the judge, the sheriff, the clerk of court, and the district administrator. They went to Barron County on March 25th and Bayfield County on March 26th. They're scheduling a trip to Green Lake County to review their courtroom setup, the workflow of prisoners being transferred from holding cells into the court and back, and position of judge's bench and jury box, just so that they can create a plan that's works within our layout and creates a efficient work product once those courtrooms are built and remodeled. So that'll be helpful and part of the process as well. So that's kind of where we're at with that project.
So you talked about the surveyor costs, and I would imagine the tours are going to incur travel costs and things like that. Are we going to account for those separately and put them in the cost of the courthouse remodel?
Yeah, anything related to this project would be into that, and Mike has got accounts set up for that.
Okay.
Even the construction of California Avenue and all that activity will be rolled into this as well.
Okay, so that's all eating into the $8 million we've allocated.
Yes.
Any more comments, any questions about the second large courtroom update?
One more comment.
Go ahead.
We had some discussion in Public Works last evening concerning the Veteran Services building across the street. Mr. Hagberg had done some review of some deficiencies in that building. So there's some talk in Public Works about the cost to get that building up to speed, or the alternative is to find another location for veteran services and, raise that building and create a better parking situation once the courtroom is constructed. So we'll have further information for Public Works on that, but they're looking into that as well.
Do they have an estimate of the cost of that?
For the veteran service building?
Yeah.
Not yet. I mean, just identified, there's some things with, some of the ductwork, there was a building and then an addition, and some of the ductwork is apparently under this slab and it's deteriorating. So that's one issue. They've had some odor that keeps cropping up. They can't find the cause of it. It's not methane. They don't know what it is, but that pops up from time to time. There's some electrical issues with the building. It's only got a 100 amp service, so it's overloaded on circuits and whatnot. So the electrical issues. There's also some ADA compliant issues over there as well. And so they have, their clientele has some difficulty in getting into that building. So there's some issues. So it's just a matter of, balancing, is this the time to take a look at that or repair it or what? So that's what we're looking at.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Hoff a question, please?
Absolutely.
Mr. Hoff, who owns that veterans building? Is it the county? And are they renting a room out of there? Do they rent from us, or are we giving those services?
I think they let counselors and stuff use it, but we're not receiving rent.
Yeah, it's a county-owned building, but we do not receive rent there.
Because I remember this when we were going for the vote on the addition of the courtroom, that this was being pitched as an addition to that, and that never happened. And I know there was some contention with the county picking up and providing a whole new building for the veterans. My father is a veteran, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather. And I also am a child of a retired 35 years Chicago police officer. I would never say no to funding something for that, but there's other issues within the county before we put a new building for the veterans. Isn't that the federal government or the state responsibility?
No, the counties have responsibility for the services that we're providing over there. As we kind of talked about that, I think the architect had proposed an addition or space for that. But I don't think, that was a significant amount of money for construction for that. And I don't think we need to necessarily do that. I mean, if we do need to find other space for the veteran service, I've been talking with Gary Elliott. I mean, there are certain requirements and advantages to certain aspects of his operation that we want to be aware of and make sure that are accommodated if they move to a different space. And if they don't, I think we need to improve that facility so that it does make it easier for veterans to access the building. So I hear what you're saying. Obviously, veteran services are an important part of this county, especially as that population gets older, as the rest of us do. And
may I offer a suggestion?
You may.
When we had Tuesday's Health and Human Services meeting, and the issue came up about Oasis, correct?
Yeah.
That building. Maybe that's a placement where the veterans facility to go, since the county owns that also.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we were looking at. And I think we need to talk to Gary a bit more. They've got, there are advantages of being close to the county facility and the Senior Resource Center and the ADRC and some of these other things. There's some services that kind of go back and forth between the two, and being centrally located to the sheriff's office has been helpful a couple of times. So, weighing all those factors in, but in our discussion at Health and Human Services with the Oasis situation, that may free up that building for other purposes. The other things to consider there too, during construction, that's going to be bothersome and noisy and whatnot. Are there, services we need to move out of this building somewhere else while that construction's going on? All kinds of different possibilities.
Ms. Pettit, any more comments?
No, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, any more comments on courtroom update, anything else? Okay, no. Let's move on to agenda item 12.
This is kind of a follow-up from the projection discussion we had last month. I did decide to change the format of the projection. Previously, the format kind of followed the layout of the audit report.
Right.
I did change the format to more reflect how we budget and how we think of the entire budget and the pieces we break it into as we go through the budget process. I think it just makes more sense for all of us to kind of understand it. And just briefly, what I mean by that is, when we do the budget, we think in terms of impact on levy. Is it operating costs? Is it special purpose levy type stuff? Is it capital improvement stuff? Is it debt stuff? So I broke my projections kind of into those categories. I did tweak the numbers a little bit from last month. And I just want to kind of reiterate that the projection is set up based on what we anticipate, not necessarily meeting the levy limits. And for example, the discussion with Health and Human Services. We know with the out-of-county placements, there's the potential for significant costs there. I've factored some of that into my projection, but as Tom mentioned, we know overall we have to fit in with certain parameters, and I haven't done the projection to show where we need to be. I've shown the projection showing the potential of the outcomes, knowing we need to fit within certain parameters. And so just, we can leave it at that if you want, or we can go through this a little bit.
I have, I guess, just a couple of general questions.
Sure.
And then I've got some more detailed accounting kind of questions. So if the committee's okay with this, I would like to just talk about a few general questions.
Sure.
And then I can meet with the staff offline and go over my debits and credits questions.
Yeah.
Okay. These projections have not been factored into the PMA model yet, have they?
No, because the PMA model is assuming that the operating levy is a constant 0.5 or 0.6% levy increase.
Right.
This projection is not that.
Right. So there's a, we talked about this last month, but there's the percent increase 2021 to 2022 is really substantial.
Right.
And
it's really two areas that are, well, more than two, but the one item is the increase in expenditures overall, including the Health and Human Services, but it's not just Health and Human Services.
Right.
And the other item that is significant, let's see if I can find it. If you go to page 29 of the packet, it would be page 3 of the projection papers. So if you look under the revenue section, at the top, this says Sawyer County daily operating budget projections.
Yep.
So under the revenue section, if you look under fund balance,
right.
you see for 2021, we applied almost $1 million of fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the fund balance, the future years, it's basically zero.
Right.
That's about $1 million swing right there.
Right.
And that's just, that kind of points out potential problems and concerns we have going forward with the human services stuff. And that's a large portion of the increase in levy you're seeing in 2022. We know it can't stay that way, but it points out the concern.
Yeah. And we just talked about fund balance for 2020.
Yeah.
You know, and that we may have more fund balance to allocate to help mitigate the
Right.
increases in 2022 budget, right?
Right.
Okay. Then we talked last month as well, is that the percent increase is really, that you guys have to work on getting this to within the limits of the levy increase.
Yes.
Okay, so that's really part of the budget. I
Yes.
call it magic. You guys don't like the word, but I like the word. That's part of your magic, what that you that you'll do.
If you go back to page 1, Mike, or.
Yeah.
So on this first page, it's kind of broke into 3 sections. If you go to that bottom section where it's kind of identified as levy limitations, the first line of that is kind of the projected levy based on anticipated, if you will. The
Right.
second line is factoring in the levy limit, and I'm assuming a 0.75% increase. And then it shows, right now it says projected greater than limit. That's the excess that we have to address.
Right. And the bottom part, the the projected is really just our daily or our operating levy, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, that is true.
And that number, the number that we call the greater than limit, I mean, that is not just what we're going to borrow for capital improvements. It's everything, right?
That's everything.
Okay. Right. Do we have a projection here on what we're going to borrow for capital improvements?
I'm staying consistent with what we did this year,
Okay.
with the exception of for 2022, there's a planned dam project. And
Right.
that's an additional 250 or 300,000 for the borrowing.
It's a Bruni.
Yeah, yeah. And then in 23, there's not a dam project. Then in 24, there's another dam project, but it's not quite as large.
Right. So what you're saying is that it's the way we were, but then we're adding dam projects to the special add-on.
Yes. That's the projection. We'll see what really happens when department heads go through the CIP and what they put into that.
So we had a substantial increase in the percent increase 2021 to 22, but thereafter we don't have a substantial increase. So what explains that? You follow what I'm saying? Percent increase 2021 to 2022 is 20.3%, and then 2023 is 6.4. Yeah, good planning.
Yeah, good. Well, I think in 2022, that's the big jump. And then 2023 is a little bit more, 2024 is a little bit more off of that big jump. So from year to year, the jump isn't as big, but that first year with the hit of fund balance.
And you explained that jump by the $1 million of fund balance roughly that we.
Yeah, yep, for sure. That,
We didn't apply yet.
yes, we have not applied again. I've not.
Okay, so when do you anticipate merging this projection into the PMA model?
Well, I guess I would question why or how we would do that, because the PMA model is set up based on the levy limit. It's based on,
Right. Okay.
So that's pretty constant. That isn't going to change. The only thing that's going to change on that is if the net new construction percentage changes from year to year, which it's going to be minor.
Right.
That'll change that model a little bit, and the amount we borrow, if we change that, that'll change that model.
Right.
This projection has to fit in the end within that PMA model.
All right. Yeah, I mean, the PMA model is really what I think the board saw, that we showed the board, and we talked about property tax increases,
That's really the end product of where we need to get to.
Right, okay, yes, understand. Any more questions on the 5-year projection? And Mike, maybe we can get together, maybe Tom will
Yeah.
sit and I got some more detailed questions.
Yep.
Okay. Any words of wisdom on the 5-year projection? A lot of work.
Huh. Stay tuned.
Okay. All right, then we've got the supplemental information. We do need a motion to change the FASD bank signature.
I need to do that.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, motion's been made and seconded to accept the treasurer's recommendation for change in bank signatures. Okay, any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Now, this would go to the county board, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else that we need to talk about? Gentlemen, Mr. Hall, Mr. Pete.
Yeah, I think, is Diane still on the line? Diane, the sales tax issue, do you have any comments on that? There is legislation pending at the state level for a sales tax holiday for restaurants and bars throughout the summer, and how that affects counties. If that legislation goes through, there would be a sales tax holiday through our busy season for a significant portion of revenue coming in on sales tax to the county. There is no provision in that legislation to reimburse the counties for that lost revenue. And I know they've had significant talk about this at the local treasurer's level. Diane, do you have any further comments or?
Nothing at this time.
Okay.
What about updating on the rebate on the property taxes?
That's okay.
Okay.
I'm hoping that the governor will veto it, but I have not heard any more, just that it did pass both the Assembly and the Senate. I have approved a plan, but I don't think that the talk is with the county treasurers that the hope is the governor will veto it.
Because of the timing and the work involved, can you explain a little bit why that causes problems at the county treasurer level?
Well, I mean, if we have to pay out that much money in a short amount of time, it doesn't make sense to put the burden all on the counties when there should be a better way to approach it. And the county treasurers have gotten together and have a list of issues with it and pass them on to the powers that be, but we're hoping we can get a better response time and get some more information going on it.
All right, so that's just a
Heads up.
scary update.
Yeah, it is.
Can we use some of the 1.5 million to cover that?
Well, I think there is money in the legislation to offset some of the costs we would have to incur to do it, which is fine. The problem I see is the timing of things. If they pass that, there's a certain amount of time that the money gets allocated, and then once that happens, we have 20 days to create checks for every taxpayer and get them out the door. So that would require inserting all of those into the financial system.
They all got to be set up as vendors.
All set up as vendors, create valid addresses. What happens when they're incorrect or the taxpayer is somebody other than who we have on record? There's all kinds of issues that we would encounter. So it's not just a matter of, well, here's some money to do it. It's all the logistics of making it happen.
As your group, WCA, or whatever, the counties association made a.
Yes, they're concerned about that portion of it, yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else that we need to talk about? Anything else for the good of the cause, so to speak? Okay. Yeah, we're adjourned. We've got a few minutes.
Good afternoon. See you guys later.
Thank you. Got a few minutes, Mr. Cambridge, before your adjournment.